Good afternoon, everybody. I am Barbara Mayetta, and I apologize for being several minutes late. Once again, had some technical difficulties. I do have to tell you, next year we are switching to Zoom for webinars. Today, we're here to talk about retirement lifestyle. And I'm assuming that most of you are here today because you're getting close to thinking about, when should I retire? What am I going to do when I retire? This is an area of passion for me, and I've been doing several workshops with our clients over the past couple of years. It's my challenge to help the clients that we have, whether they be wealth clients or participants in 401k plans, think about how and challenge them for how to have a better life in retirement. So this is the first of a series. We're going to be doing this on a quarterly basis, and early in 2026, we'll be announcing topics and dates for next year. And they'll be announced in the newsletters that we have that go out monthly, and all of you will also receive an email announcing it, and one page where you can go sign up for all of them. And also, I wanted to mention before we get started that we will have a blog coming out. It will be on our website after this, about 3-4 days afterwards. With the help of AI, they are going to take everything I say and let me rewrite it into an article so that you'll get most of the content to be able to see it all in a blog. So just real quickly, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I've been in financial services over 30 years, and I have, but not always as an advisor. This is something that I've moved into for what I want to call the final stage of my career, because I love getting out with and working with people and seeing firsthand how I can impact and make people's lives and help people make their lives better. Is what I really like to say. And I am passionate about working with people who are approaching the end of their careers or early in retirement. This is such a great time in life because people at this juncture, at this transition point, they have life experience that they never had before, so much life experience. They have so much knowledge. They have wisdom, and they have more confidence than they've ever had before in their life. And if you take all of that and put it together with a transition, that's a great time to begin thinking about, well, based on all that I know about myself now, what do I want to do? And how do I make that last chapter of my life really the best chapter of my life? And I like to help people think about that and move forward into that. And obviously, as part of my job is to help people also do it with financial confidence, make sure they have plans that are going to support their passions and their dreams. Love doing this. It's such an exciting time of life. So today we're going to talk in 2 sections. We're going to talk a little bit about, hey, what does retirement look like today? I'll try to go through this a little bit quickly, but I like to make sure that everybody's kind of grounded with the same information that we're seeing. Studies by reputable organizations about this is what we see happening out there, and what are some of the challenges to it. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about 4 strategies, 4 things I want you to think about, beginning to think about, and how to explore them to change your life in retirement. And then, as I mentioned, we're going to have some workshops in 2026 on a quarterly basis that will dive down into many of these topics, and in some cases bring in some experts to discuss these topics with us. So you're thinking about retirement. One question that's very important to think about is, how long will you live? Well, you're going to see I'm referencing a AgeWave study. AgeWave is a very reputable, call it a think tank, that does a lot of research on retirees and people as they get older. And their most recent study, 2023, they're looking at, if you are 65 years old today and you're a woman, you're probably going to live to about 87. If you are a man, you're probably going to live to 84, 85. I want everybody to be really careful recognizing how they differ from the average. That many of you, because you're joining us, you're employed, you're probably socially, economically doing pretty well. That's probably given you access to better medicine. If you have, good education, that also people with better educations are also living longer. So you may not be that average. You may actually be above average, and you need to think about that in relation to, what these life expectancies are that are being predicted. If you were 65 years old today, you've got about a 25% chance of living to age 94, probably a 24% chance of living longer than that. So, take that into consideration. For many of us, that's going to mean living 20 years longer than our grandparents, because our grandparents did not live in a time with as good a medical care that we have today. So it's important to think about, my life's going to be different than what I saw for my grandparents, and maybe even for my parents. Part of the Age Wave survey said, hey, people that are retiring today, they expect to live to about 89. Well, that's what a lot of people seem to be planning for. Once again, that's an average. You can go to Social Security, look up on their website, their life expectancy calculator, and you'll see you can put in just any age and come and see what ages they're planning, and this is what they use in their calculations for their payouts for Social Security for men and women. And you'll see that the older you get, the longer your life expectancy, and that is because you made it to that age. You no longer are gonna, if you're 65, you're no longer gonna pass away when you're 50. So makes it more likely that you will live longer. Something to think about and something to plan for. But how is the way people live changing? And this is just one aspect, but a really important aspect of it is from our parents. If they retired 25 years ago, back then, about 22% of people looked at retirement as being a new chapter in life. Some of those other bars on there are things like a time to relax, a time to take care of grandchildren, but not necessarily a new chapter in life. We retired today, we're finding 55% of people are thinking that retirement is the time for a new chapter in life, which really means preparing for it and planning for what we want to do and how we want that new chapter in life to be. Now that retirement is for many people somewhere between 20 and 30 years long, we have new challenges that maybe our parents didn't all have. One of them that I think is really important to us, and this is also one that's now impacting women that didn't always impact women before, is the loss of identity. To pick on women here for a moment, when my mom retired, she had a job, but it wasn't her career. It wasn't, she did not identify herself by what her job was. Men for many, many decades and generations have been identifying themselves by what their job is. Now more and more women have careers, and those careers play into their identity. So something women need to think about more than, say, that maybe their mothers did. And why is loss of identity something important to think about? And how do we avoid it? And I'll throw out to you that you're early in retirement, you go to a dinner party and somebody asks you, what you do, or somebody says, hey, tell me a little bit about yourself. And if you're starting that conversation with, I'm a retired, sales executive, I'm a retired accountant, I'm a retired, whoops, you haven't yet found your new identity. And it's really hard to want to go through the last 20 to 30 years of your life with identifying yourself as what you used to do. It's time to start thinking about what is your new identity? Who are you to yourself that you're going to say, this is who I am now? Very important to start thinking about that. It will help us fill in the lack of structure in our life. So when you retire at first, and trust me, I'm there, it is wonderful to say, hey, I don't have to get up in the morning. Let me sleep in. Let me get up when I want to do what it is I want to do today. Great idea. Works really well for a while. But after a while, because there's that lack of structure, there's empty time in your day. Empty time, at some point, we want to start filling it, or we find other people want to start filling our empty time. And whether it be a neighbor who's asking if you can help out, with, picking Jimmy up from school for them because you're here and they're at work, or whether it's, a daughter who's trying to get you to help 3 days a week with babysitting her kids. That sounded great for 1 day a week, but maybe not 3. But since you don't have, your calendar's not full, you can't justify not doing 3. And you find yourself getting sucked into things that aren't going after what's important to you, but they're filling your time because you have it. So one of the challenges becomes you now have more time, lack of structure, figuring out how you want to fill that time before it gets filled by others. That gets to that thought of finding purpose. And yeah, finding purpose is challenging. How do you go about doing that? I'm going to talk a little bit more about that when we talk about, 4 strategies, because this is not a simple thing. So we'll get into this just a little bit later. And maintaining social connection. And this becomes a challenge because for many people, their social connection is through their work. Or they have friends who now are getting to retirement age also, and they're headed to Florida, or they're moving to California to be closer to their children. Our friends, our social infrastructure changes as we retire. So figuring out, well, how do I rebuild that? When was the last time I made a new friend? When was the last time I thought about how to, do I have really good friends? I have a lot of acquaintances. How do I make acquaintances into really good friends? And we haven't done this for a long time. That's a whole new skill set we haven't worked on for a while. I'm going to later on point you to a book that I think is really good at having you evaluate and think about your social connections, and gives lots of tips for how to make friends, and more importantly, not just how to meet people, but how to move people to being, friends, and then become pretty good friends, and then becoming the best friends. Because one of the things that I ask people when we talk about the social connection is, if you needed someone to come help you move your couch, who would that be? Do you have friends that you know well enough that would come over and help you move your furniture around? Or in my case, I like to have parties, but I like to also make sure that I have somebody there helping me in the last hour before the party starts. It's kind of fun having a little bit of wine, and also, having somebody there at the house when 10 minutes after the party started, no one's shown up yet, and you're feeling, oh, well, if there's somebody there, that's fun. But who is that person? And do I have a couple of them? It's important to have people that are there at that close level with you to be part of your life. Almost to the end of this, but I want to point out that early retirement, pre-retirees, people who are retired love to do the pre-retirement activities they didn't have enough time for when they were still working. So I love to travel, don't get that much vacation time. Love to garden, yeah, I can do it on weekends. Tennis, golf, fixing up the house, entertaining, whatever it is, we start to, at the beginning of retirement, do a lot more of that. And that's a lot of fun. And I'm never going to say don't do that, because that's, part of what you need to do. But those activities, part of why they were so fun was because I could only get them in for a few hours a week. Now suddenly I'm retired. And after a while, the wonder of doing those pre-retirement and being permanently on vacation, it starts to wear off, and we can start getting a little bit bored with it. So I like to recommend to people that in this early retirement, when you're spending a lot of time doing the permanent vacation activities, also make sure you're making time to explore purpose. What's going to provide more purpose for your life in retirement, so that as the permanent vacation starts to wear off, you're ready to start and jump into new activities to help provide you with purpose during retirement. Kind of a little preparation. And the last item I want to talk about here when we talk about what retirement looks like today, there are many experts out there coming up with timelines. What do the stages of retirement look like for people? I like this one that also AgeWave does. Although I'm going to tell you at the end, I have the fourth stage I'm not as wild about. But clearly, and hopefully this is what you're doing here today, anticipation. Few years out from retirement, whether that's 10 years, 5 years, if you're, just 1 year out, that's fine too. Anticipation, great to be doing that, great to be here today to start thinking about what do I need to think about for how I'm going to live in retirement. The next phase, a little bit like what we just talked about with the permanent vacation. You're liberated. You're going to go out and do some really fun things. But it also can be, disorienting here too, because I suddenly have all that time to fill. What am I going to do? Is this what I want to do? So it can be kind of this great time, and it can be a little disorienting while you figure out who am I going to become in retirement. The next phase after that, which hopefully is, a lot longer than the time you spent in liberation and disorientation, is reinventing. So this is that part where you've figured out, you've thought about what is it that's important to me? What is it that I didn't do in those first phases of life because I was working or raising a family, didn't have the time? What am I going to become here? And they're showing it here as 3 to 14 years, basically. If you retired at 65, this is getting you up to age 80. Anyways, a time that you can really focus and think about what am I going to do and how am I going to get there, and let's have fun doing this. And then there's a phase after this where maybe your health or your body are starting to slow down. They call this reflection/resolution. I really want to encourage people to understand that just because your body is slowing down doesn't mean it's the time to give up purpose, doesn't mean it's the time to act that much differently, but maybe you just need to modify a bit, that maybe the things that are provided purpose before, maybe I'm not out building houses for Habitat for Humanity, but maybe I'm out working with seniors who can't read. I'm out in senior homes reading to people. I'm out reading to preschoolers. I'm figuring out how to spend time still doing things that are meaningful to me. If what's important to me is giving back to community, there are lots of ways to give back to community that don't require large commitments of time nor a lot of physical energy. Or it may be figuring out how you're spending more time with family and children and grandchildren. So it's still a time to think about and move forward, but with whatever physical ailments may be starting to develop as you get a little bit older. So let's talk about, hey, what can I do, right? What can I do to intentionally live my life with meaning and success in this next phase? And the most important word in this is intentionally. And that's part of where I want you guys to get to in this. What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? And what am I going to do to get there? So there are 4 key areas I want to mention today to think about in creating your retirement lifestyle. One is your mindset. 2 is the passions, right? What are your passions? How do you explore them? The third one is your physical health, because that is going to play a huge part in what the remainder of your life looks like, because your body is changing. It's not the same as it was when you're 20 and 30. And I'm going to touch on that as we get further in here. And then talk a little bit about planning and how to start thinking. I am a planner by nature, but I just want to throw in kind of a structure to help you think about the phases of your life going forward, which may help you start planning a little bit what you want to do and when you want to do it in your life. Mindset. This is important because what mindset is really what's your mind telling you? What's your perception of yourself? Are you someone who wants to go out and be a different person? Maybe you really like who you are and you want to continue to do that. Maybe you've been so involved doing everything all your life. What you're trying to do now is figure out how to cut back and enjoy life a little bit more. You need to figure out a little bit, what's your mindset now? Because this is going to help determine your behavior, your outlook, and your mental attributes. Two very common models, or one very common model for looking at mindset is, do you have a growth mindset or a fixed mindset? And I don't want to at all, especially given that this is green and red, imply that, one is better than the other. They're very different. But on the fixed mindset is, hey, what I'm doing right now is all I want to do. This is good enough. And I don't want to do the extra work to make changes in life. And that's fine. But make sure that you're doing that by choice, not because you don't know what to do. The growth mindset is, yeah, I want to start doing something differently. I can really work harder or work differently. And this might take some time and effort, but it's well worthwhile. And if that's where you want to be, recognize that and commit yourself to that mindset. Next item is passion. And I am going to tell you the next session I do is going to be all about ways to find your passion and different exercises and different ways of looking at things to help you figure out, how do I explore my passion, or at least get ideas to begin exploring. But why is it important? Because it's what compels you to wake up in the morning, right? If you haven't been able to tell already, I am passionate about getting up and talking to 55 people who wanted to think about their retirement lifestyle today. To me, that's thrilling because I got a lot of knowledge about this. So I love to share it. And that's what compelled me to get out of bed this morning. You can change having a passion can help you change your life, provide that sense of purpose, provide me that motivation. It's really great because it also helps you develop skills, and developing skills really important for keeping your mind active and healthy for the rest of your life. But if in my particular case, I study this all of the time. I am reading books, I'm talking to people who are working in this field. To me, it's thrilling to be learning about it because people can make a difference to their retirement, and I'm learning more and more about how to do that. And of course, the more you learn, the more confidence you have to be able to share and talk to people. Great sense of purpose. So how do we go about doing this? So today I'm just going to touch on a couple of things to think about, and then please join my webinar in March to talk more about passion, and we'll be handing out exercises that people can do to explore it in more depth. But first, I want to say, I want you looking inward and outward. So inward, spending time in your own mind, thinking about past times in your life. You can even look at it as childhood, high school, college, early in your career, when you were later in your career, when you were a parent, when you were a caregiver. Whatever your phases, however you kind of phase out your life, think about what were you passionate about in those different times in your life. And always with any of these things, ask yourself why. What was it that I was passionate about? Maybe for a time I was passionate about bowling. Well, was it because you actually loved throwing the ball and watching it knock down the pins? Or was it because of the camaraderie that you got from working with people and being part of a team? So kind of figuring out what was it, because maybe I don't need to go out bowling again, but maybe what I really want is a team. I want to figure out where I can be part of a team again. And is it an athletic team, or is it a team that is trying to achieve something, building something for my community? What is that team doing? But maybe what I really want is the team. So thinking about why I love that passion that I had earlier. Yep, that's my second bullet there. Think about the activities you loved and why you have them. In order to explore, read some books. I throw in a couple here at the end. If you really want more books on finding passion earlier, you're invited to email me and I'll send you a bigger list of books that I recommend people explore on this. But there are lots of websites, lots of podcasts that have different methods to go about finding your passion. And what I'm going to tell you is I know a ton of them at this point, and different ones work for different people. But one of them that is really helpful that I'd like to encourage all of you, as you start to get a little more serious about figuring out passions, is to have a journal so that you're writing it down, so that you remember, gosh, what was I thinking about just recently? And of course, meditation. As we spend time with our own minds and time alone quietly, it helps us explore the concepts and the ideas that are in our head a little better. And then I also want you spending time in the world to think about it. And this is my favorite, because I love talking with people, is talk with people. The next time you're around people who are around your own age, talk to them about what they're thinking about. Because if you know what they're thinking about, you might find they have some interesting thoughts you haven't thought about. You may find out they're thinking about some of the things you're thinking about for doing later. And then you can discuss, okay, well, how are you going to get there, right? Oh, you're thinking about teaching. I don't even know anybody who teaches, but I'd love to do that. Do you know people who teach? Let's get together with them, talk about how they got there. So get out and talk to people, and talk to people who are already 10 years older than you. How did they get to doing some of the things they've gotten to? And what advice would they have to help you shorten your path to getting to where you'd like to be in 10 years from now? And then, of course, try things, especially if you're pre-retirement right now. This is a great time to start to add a little bit of those activities into your daily activities, or trying out on a weekend, whether that be that new sport, that new team. Maybe it's trying out the a new charity organization, volunteering, getting involved and figuring out, is this organization, might this be right for me? And oh, by the way, if it's not, the people you meet there might know about other similar organizations that would be better for you. Talk to people. And then here's just a list of some questions that we find are really helpful for people to begin that journey, right? Think about your legacy. What do you want your children or your close friends to remember about you? One of the exercises we have is the eulogy exercise, where I ask people to think about, what are 10 words you want someone to use in describing you in your eulogy. Eulogy is not an obituary. It's not these are the things you did in your life. It's not your resume. It's how do people remember you, your characteristics. Hopefully all of you at some point have had that feeling when you're doing something of being, I refer to it as in the zone. I've now discovered others use the term in flow. But when you're so involved with doing something that time just flies right by, because you are so, I'm going to get this done and I'm not thinking about anything else. And you can Put everything else aside. I'm a tennis player, and one of the things I love about tennis is that once I'm out on that tennis court and I'm in a game, I do forget everything else that's bothering me. So, hey, when I'm upset about something, I go find some people to go play tennis, because then while I'm on that court, I think about that little yellow ball and where it is, and I'm not thinking about, the fight I just had with my spouse. And also think about what's important to you in your life today, what was important to you about your life in the past, and what do you think is going to be important to you about your life in the future. And the one that I really, really like is to think about, what are you really good at? We all have things we're really good at. Sometimes I even like to say we have things that we're the best at, right? What am I the best at? Nobody wants to say they're the best at anything. I'll tell you, I am the best at being a mother to my oldest daughter. And okay, so what were the strengths I have that, made me the best mom to her? And as I can explore that, I can then figure out, well, okay, how can I apply those strengths to something else other than just being her mom? That doesn't mean I wasn't a good mom to the other kids too, but, to the first one, maybe I was a little stronger mom. And a little bit related to, what you used to enjoy doing. Figure out an activity that you used to do a long time ago that you really enjoyed, and why did you stop, right? Is this something you can go back to? Maybe it is. Maybe there are things that you did that you used to really like. And okay, going off my own life experience, I'm going to tell you, I used to enjoy shooting archery as a kid at the place we went for vacation for 2 weeks every year. Really loved it. And then my kids started doing it. But I of course stopped, and then of course I started shooting a little bit with them. And then I had a son who was, before he had his driver's license, really wanted to shoot archery, and started to found a place where he could do that locally. It was actually a team. And then I would go with him on weekends, and found that, I still had a natural ability for shooting archery. And guess what? There are adult archery teams. And next thing I know, I am out shooting archery and, competing at, and winning, state. Literally, I was ranked #2 in the state of Massachusetts during the time I was shooting. It was cool. And this is something I used to enjoy. Who would have known that it would come back again? And I'd love to do it again, and will do it again at some point in the future when I have more time, right after I get back to rowing too. But those are the things that, would be really great to do, love to do. So think about that for your own life. My third item I mentioned, physical health. When we think about health, a lot of us think about lifespan. That's the x-axis on this curve that I'm about to talk about. But lifespan isn't necessarily what makes our life great. We need to have all those other things I was just talking about, but you need to have health to do that. So health span is something that, as we get older, we need to start focusing on more to help us have that really good last chapter of our life. In the olden days, before where medicine is today, before modern medicine, we used to have pretty good health through about the first half, and then we'd start getting, it started to go down, usually, about halfway through that life. And then at some point, when we get that disease that was not curable, it would go down pretty quick at the end. So our curve was going down for a lot of that lifespan period. Not the way we want to live a lot. As we get into what the experts call medicine 2.0, and by the way, this is where I want to give a lot of credit to Dr. Peter Attia. These charts are coming from him, but a lot of other folks have been putting these charts out for some time, but I'm using the terminology from him. Medicine 2.0 helped us, in medicine 2.0 is really where we are today. You get an ailment, you go to a doctor, and they give you some medication, they give you some, you get an operation, you get some kind of treatment, and it makes our life a little bit better. But mostly what it does is it keeps us alive, but it doesn't necessarily keep us alive longer with a healthy life. But we develop congenital heart failure. We can stay alive longer than we used to, but not necessarily all that healthy. Same thing with many cancer cures. There's just many things that we get today where medicine 2.0 is extending our life, but not necessarily at a high health level. So the next phase to think about is something that many are calling medicine 3.0. Medicine 3.0 is helping to move our healthiness, how healthy we are throughout our life, out further in our lifespan. And the ultimate goal here is to square the curve. So let's bring this out. We're healthy, healthy, healthy. And then, at the end, we go down pretty quickly. So we didn't spend a lot of time going down. And the point of all of this that I really want to point out is that as we get older, our bodies change. And we can't treat them like we did when we were in our 20s and 30s and 40s anymore, which for many of us was, I didn't do a lot proactively to keep my body healthy. And now, as our bodies change, we need to change how we treat our bodies. And that means being more proactive in taking care of them. And if we do this, many people, not everybody, medicine is, our bodies are all different, but many of us are going to find that we can start to square this curve. And by the way, if we are focusing on our health, that will probably also increase our lifespan also. But mostly what we wanted, if you focus on the health span, keeping our bodies, proactively keeping our bodies healthy, we can have better, longer years. I'm going to introduce another new term that I really love, which is the marginal decade. And this really is that time towards the very end of your life when, based on medicine 2.0, right, we're down in that, life is not all of that good down here. But maybe in medicine 3.0, we can do more to have better quality of life during that marginal decade if we focus a little bit on what's it take to keep ourselves healthy then. I'm just going to throw out a couple of things right now. The research, and we'll get into this more in future workshops and hopefully get some experts in here to talk about this. It still seems, everything I am seeing, exercise is by far the biggest contributor to health span. But it consists of many different components. It's strength training, because our muscles lose strength quicker the older we are. So we really need to focus on strength training and doing it consistently. Because it does, if you spend 2 weeks in a hospital, you are going to come out very surprised at how much muscle tone you lose. You lose it quickly the older you get. So strength training, even if it's minor, doing it all of the time. And I don't want to suggest anybody just jump in and do a complete change in their life and suddenly I go from doing nothing to doing everything. This is all of this stuff is something you start to develop life habits and move towards. Cardiovascular, start with the walking. Maybe you get to a point where you're doing a little jogging. Maybe it's just on the treadmill. That's all I ever jog is on the treadmill. Maybe it's on the bike. Maybe it's on the rowing machine. I get on the rowing machine to get a good cardio workout. Balance and mobility and flexibility. If you're not also focused on your mobility and flexibility, some of us call it stretching, but mobility is really having the joints working, not just flexibility, which is what you think about with the muscles. You're going to get injured. So it's really important to be working on all of these. Social infrastructure, we talked about that a little bit before, but that does contribute to your health span. Continuous learning. absolutely is contributing to your ability to keep your mental and physical health. And I love to say on continuous learning, both the physical, looking at and being able to do things like dancing, playing an instrument, that is both mental and physical, trying to get that coordination. Really, really very, very helpful. And this is going to help ward off some of the dementia that we all are concerned about moving into. And nutrition. And by the way, this list is, depending upon who you talk to, this list is 10 items long, or this list is 50 items long. I didn't want to start to, get anybody, focused on lots of different things, but these are the things I see coming up to the top of the list for most of the experts out there. And the last item to talk a little bit about is planning. And why is planning important? Well, planning's important because planning requires that we have some goals. If I'm going to plan for something, I had to have the goal that I'm planning to achieve. Having goals, really important for moving forward, for feeling good, for having that achievement, right? If I don't have goals, I don't achieve them, I don't get that feeling, that sense of achievement that I did something that I wanted to do. It also makes us think about and plan for how I'm going to achieve those goals. That's what planning really is kind of, okay, I have a goal, I want to teach when I am retired, right? Part-time, 2 days a week. Okay, now how am I going to go about doing this? Do I want to substitute teach at the local high school? Do I want to, I have an expertise in a certain thing and maybe I'll do a college class online. How do I get there? Well, it makes you think about finding people who are doing it or contacting colleges or universities. How am I going to achieve this? Makes you make that list. And it keeps you focused. Planning, if I have a plan, I'll keep focused in doing this. I'm not going to talk anymore about how you go about planning. Hopefully many of you have some ideas on that. Maybe we'll touch on it in the future. What I wanted to do was give you kind of a structure to think about planning for this phase of life. I'm doing this with something that we call a timeline analysis. Once again, I want to give Dr. Peter Attia credit as to this is where these ideas are coming from. So here's a timeline, right? This can be in 5-year, 10 years, usually do it in 5-year increments. And you're going to have a line for you, maybe a line for your partner or other really special people in your life who you know are going to be there. Lines for your children or some special people. Maybe I know somebody who's got a niece who's like a child to her, special person, always put them in there. Get all those children in there, maybe even some of your son or daughter-in-laws if you like them. Grandchildren, put those grandchildren's names in there. Or if you're like me, I don't have grandchildren yet, but at some point, hopefully I have grandchildren. Well, I can guess and figure out when might I put them in there. So how do I go about thinking about how to fill out this timeline analysis? Well, first, let's put in some ages, right? I'm making this up here, but I'm getting close to 60, so call it 60, call it 65 for my partner. And then start to fill in, I went with life expectancy here, right? Went straight from the chart. So maybe for a woman who's 60, I'm going to live to 85. My spouse here, my partner at 65, maybe to 85. Once again, go over to Social Security life expectancy calculator, but please remember to adjust a little bit based upon, your current health, your access to health care. Other things that say, remembering this is the average of everyone in the United States at this age. So remember to make the adjustments. So what else am I doing with this timeline? Well, I'm filling in the ages for the other people. As I mentioned, maybe I don't have grandchildren yet. So let's put one in that's 0, but will be born in 3 years. So in 5 years, they'll be 2 years old, right? You make it up. This is your family, your friends, the people who are important in your life. But let's throw that timeline analysis on there so that you can start to think about what's happening in the lives of others as you're planning for your life. And you'll look at your life differently if you just put this together. Maybe the first thing, I'm shooting for the easy ones here. Grandkids at these ages are going to graduate from high school, and then they're going to graduate from college. Gosh, how old am I going to be? Oh, first one, I'll be 80. I can attend that. Oh, second one, going to be 90. Oh, can I attend that? What do I have to do to be healthy enough to attend that? Maybe I'm looking at their weddings. I probably needed to marry off that child right there first, but I gotta, when might their weddings be in relation to my timeline analysis? Maybe there are some things you want to do in life. I threw in here a trip. My oldest daughter and I, we've been wanting to take one of those river cruises in Europe together. She can't do it right now because of her job. So maybe it's 5 years out. Well, let's get that on there so it doesn't become 10 years out. And oh, by the way, by then she'll have the kids and then she can't do it anymore. So we got to get this in before she has the kids. She can still do it. And I'm not, her kids aren't out of college so that, I have to wait till I'm 84 to do this. Start to think of that a little bit. And by the way, as I was doing this for myself, one of my children said, Mom, we've been thinking about that. And I'm talking to my other sister about when we're going to have kids because we really want you to be part of their lives. And we might have to have them a little earlier to make sure that you are still around and healthy and young to be a really important part of their life. I love that she was thinking about, my age relation to her children and how we make sure there's good overlap to be part of their lives. The other thing I want you to think about is, so this is Social Security and when your life's going to be, but what is the age that your parents lived to? My parents are both 95 and still alive, so I put it way out here. So what's my marginal decade? We were talking about marginal decade a moment ago. Add in your marginal decade. But also, I want you to be thinking about things like that first 15 years where you're reinventing yourself. Where is that on here? Make sure you put that in here so that you understand, hey, if I have a passion for working with veterans, well, maybe I don't want to wait till I'm 75 to start that because I want to make sure it's on my timeline and I'm going to get to it. So start filling in your timeline with what's important to you. And what's important to you as you get to your marginal decade. What do you want to be able to do? I want to be able to travel to this child's wedding. I want to be able to go to college graduation. So I need to make sure that by my marginal decade, I'm still traveling. And maybe I'm not on a walker anymore yet. So what is it that motivates me every day to take care of my body in a way that will increase my marginal decade and my ability to participate in it? Great planning tool, great thing to start thinking about your planning in different phases of your life. Take a shot at it. So as we finish up here today, I just want to say, hey, what do I wish for you as you go through your journey to getting to retirement? That you have a new view on how longevity is going to impact your life, and you make sure you adjust and take advantage of what longevity is going to bring for you. I really wish for you that you find out what you're passionate about. Oh, look at that. I skipped straight to 4. I really wish for you that you intentionally design the rest of your life and don't just let it happen. And that's part of, hey, look at that timeline, figure out what you want to do and when you want to do it. And that you begin or increase now investing in your health. And I do view it very much as an investment. Just like you save for retirement, you should be investing in your health for retirement. And that's my wish for you. Here are some books. These will be mentioned in the blog that's coming out. Great books on, hey, if you are unretired, you don't actually think you really want to retire, but maybe you're going to be pursuing some other passions that might be work related, or maybe it's taking I have a wonderful woman I'm thinking about having on when we talk about passions, who retired. She had been an executive, but she had always done some level of sculpting. And now she's actually out selling her sculpting and is sought after to do busts of people. So really, really happy for her in her pursuit of, and actually, you know, I don't want to call it making a living, but she's getting paid. People love her stuff, and that's giving her a lot of self-satisfaction. This second book here is kind of a good overall looking at all aspects of retirement. Love this book too. Solo and Smart. So many people are going into retirement solo, and this book addresses that and things to think about as you're going into retirement solo. If you're a woman and want to be thinking about health span, brain span, lifespan, not to say that men wouldn't get a lot out of this book also, but this is written as women, the audience, and the woman who wrote this is part of Age Wave. She and her husband are the people who created Age Wave, and recently she came out with this book to help women increase their health. And I have also mentioned Dr. Peter Attia a couple of times. This is a book he came out with 3 years ago, I think. #1 New York Times bestseller. It is technical. The tough part, the beginning is a little bit more technical. I loved it on Audible. Loved having especially the technical part read to me. The second half of the book has more of the ideas, but please try to get through the first part if you're interested in reading this, because you'll get more out of the second part. And I love this last book on social connection, because it also is looking at evaluating your social connections and looking at how to improve them. And move yourself from one stage to another. And like I said, we can get that list. It'll be available in the blog. So, you know, how can we help? Let me take a few questions now. If we have some questions, looking in the chat to see. Oh, and the question about what other areas are we going to be supporting? Like I said, the next one is what other topics, exploring passions. We'll have one next year on volunteering, because we hear from so many people that volunteering is important to them. So we'll have a whole one on how to find volunteer organizations and how to pick ones that are right for you, how to try them out, learn a little bit more about them. As I mentioned, trying to get an expert in, talk to us a little bit more about health span, and maybe even just somebody to talk to us about exercising and caring for our bodies in this age. And I do actually have a woman lined up to do one of these next year, talking about exercise from all of those aspects of cardio, strength, mobility, flexibility, nutrition. So trying to get different aspects of this, and those are some of those that we'll have coming next year. Okay, I hope this has been helpful. Please, if you have questions, you can contact me, please feel free to. And hope this was helpful. Thank you very much for joining.